The Russian military has accused the U.S.-led coalition of bombing civilians in airstrikes on Mosul and nearby areas. Sergei Witskoy of the military's general staff said that more than 60 civilians have been killed and 200 wounded in such strikes over the past 3 days. Witskoy said that a U.S. jet struck a school for girls on Friday in the southern part of Mosul, and airstrikes targeted residential areas in several cities near Mosul over the weekend. The Russian military official noted that Daesh terrorists continue moving from Iraq to Syria, while around 300 terrorists have already arrived in the city of Deir al-Zor from Mosul. Richard Hayden Black, the Republican member of Virginia State Senate and Vietnam veteran, joins us to share with us his thoughts. Well, you know, when you want to talk about consequences of war, the U.S. seems to be involved in many of them, this being the latest one. But let's move beyond this and talk about terrorists. 8 months ago, roughly, Russia asked the United States to separate these terrorists from these so-called rebels, no matter which terrorist groups there are, whether it's the Daesh ones, al-Nusra Front, and the like. The U.S. has refused to do that, and because of it, talks broke down, and we can see the situation as it is. Why is the U.S. refusing to separate the terrorists from the so-called rebels?
Well, the problem that we have is that these so-called rebels are so thoroughly integrated with Al-Qaeda and with ISIS that they really are one and the same. They're part of the same army. The Defense Intelligence Agency did a study back in 2013, and one of their findings was that the CIA planned to run arms from Libya into Turkey and then into Syria had broken down from, it was ostensibly a program to supply moderate rebels, and they said it had just evolved into an indiscriminate program of supplying all rebels, including specifically ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So you have the Central Intelligence Agency supplying weapons to ISIS and Al-Qaeda. We do it indirectly because it's unlawful to do it directly. And so what we do is we keep extremely violent organizations like Jaish al-Islam and Ahrar al-Sham and al-Zinki, and we keep these off the terrorist watch list because these are the agents that take our weapons and then distribute them to ISIS and Al-Qaeda. If you go back to the time when Russia sent the expeditionary forces to aid Syria, if the United States had just stayed out of it at that point, the war would be over by now. People would be rebuilding, refugees would be returning back to Syria, but the United States rushed anti-tank missiles, and we used these so-called moderate rebels as a conduit to supply al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda in Syria, and ISIS, and we got them the anti-tank missiles that they needed that allowed them to slow down the Syrian advance. And so this is why we can't separate them, because they really are not separate. They are one and the same.
Well, let's break this down into two parts. First of all, from what I gather from what you have said, am I correct to conclude that if the U.S. right now was to pull out of Syria, would we see the surrendering of these terrorists and in turn perhaps the situation to start to move towards normalcy?
I think that would have happened when the Russians went in. I think the Syrian army with Russian air support would have quickly conquered all of the rebel forces and driven them out of Syria. As you know, probably 3/4 of the rebels are not Syrian at all. They are mercenaries recruited by Turkey, by Qatar, by Saudi Arabia, and they are paid. In some cases, the pay of mercenaries may be 4 or 5 or even 10 times what a Syrian soldier receives. So they're able to recruit these people from around the world. So if you go back to when the Russians first went in and the United States had taken no action to support the terrorists, the war would be over. Now, today, you have what I consider the axis of evil: Turkey, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. These are the ones who are the primary force behind the terrorist movement, particularly Turkey. The Turkish border runs along the north of both Syria and Iraq. Turkey has invaded Iraq. It has invaded Syria with heavy military forces. Turkey has really become a rogue nation. It's even, President Erdogan has put into question the Treaty of 1923 that set the border between Turkey and Greece. And so now he's beginning, you see this emerging threat against Western Europe by Turkey. So I'm not sure that the United States could shut down the war, but if we were not supporting the war in Syria, I believe that the Syrians, combined with their allied forces, with Iran, from Lebanon, from Russia, I believe that they would move very steadily, and I think they would restore the borders of Syria and restore peace. It would take a little bit longer than if we had not gotten involved when the Russians first went in, but I think it would happen.
So if you can explain to me, and I'm not promoting the name of the person that I'm about to mention, but when U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump says, well, look at Russia, they're fighting the terrorists. Look at Iran in its advisory role. They're helping with the fight against these terrorists and, of course, the Syrian army, but they're called the bad guys.
Well, I agree with him. I think Donald Trump has a very clear understanding of what's happening over there. Sometimes his rhetoric has to match the political mood of the moment. But I know a number of his advisors, and his advisors believe that our determination to topple the government in Syria is suicidal, that it threatens not only the entire Middle East, but literally the entire world. And the United States itself is threatened, because we know that if Syria falls, it will be dominated by some Al-Qaeda related organization. Lebanon will fall, Jordan will fall, and the entire area will be destabilized. Beyond that, if you watch Turkish President Erdogan, he's been a very patient man, and he has made clear that he looks to the resurrection of the Ottoman Empire, and he has become more and more aggressive. He's crushed the military. He's crushed the free press. Every powerful institution of Turkish government has come under his iron fist, and he is now a total dictator. He's a man who has said that he wants the Constitution amended so that he will have powers similar to those of Adolf Hitler. This is the man that the United States says, oh, this is our great ally. We're allied with the man who would be Hitler. We're allied with the Saudi Arabians, where women are not allowed to walk out in the front yard to pick up the newspaper without a man's permission. They can't drive a car. And somehow this is part of the liberalization that we that we seek to impose on the Middle East. It's bizarre. I mean, I call them the axis of evil: Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. These are the nations that are causing absolute chaos throughout the Middle East. They took down Libya. They've tried to take down Syria. They tried to take down Egypt. They're trying to take down Yemen, and God bless them, the Yemenis are giving the Saudis a bloody nose. And here's this tiny little poor nation, and the Saudi Arabians are trying to overwhelm them with American support, unfortunately. And it's a criminal war. I think the world recognizes that Saudi Arabia is just embarked in massive war crimes in Yemen, but we don't pay too much attention to them because they're our good allies. But the United States is on a terribly suicidal course of action, and we are using, Saudi money pays the very top politicians in many Western nations, and they really have co-opted the American military into acting as mercenaries for Wahhabism. And while often there are things said in the press that are negative towards Iran, the fact of the matter is that if you really look at world terrorism, global terrorism, it all emanates from Saudi Arabia. Whether you look at the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Centers, whether you look at the Boston bombing, the Fort Hood massacre, San Bernardino, Brussels, Paris, all of it is a reflection of the Wahhabi philosophy, and it is a reflection in some cases, like 9/11 with the Twin Towers, of actual involvement of Saudi government officials, high government officials, in facilitating the attack on the Twin Towers. And here we consider them our allies. It's absolutely insane.
Very well. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. A pleasure talking to you. Richard Hayden Black, Republican member of the Virginia State Senate and Vietnam veteran, talking to us there from Broadlands. Thank you for your comments.